gong. And our next author is Jerry Flanzer from Social Work.
That's me. Five minutes, huh? So, I had the wonderful opportunity of working with a team, two other people, Ruth McCroy of Boston College, and Jones Lotnick of the National Association of Social Work, formerly the Director of the Institute Advancement of Social Work Research, to write a book. And the book is told, can you read that? But anyway, you should have a flyer, Building Research Culture and Infrastructure. It is mostly aimed at schools of social work. It's particularly aimed at schools that do not have PhD programs, although there is a PhD component. And it says, how do you go about getting money and so forth. But the history behind that is that I had, when I was working in the National Institute of Health, given a number of seminars with a group of people on going after research, and the other authors had done similar kind of things. We were approached by two of the professional organizations in social work. One's the Council of Social Work Education, that the accrediting body of schools of social work. The other one is it's called the Social Work Research Society, I guess Society of Social Work Research. And they approached us to be part of a group and hand out a series on how do you go about doing research, how do you get research, what are the essentials to build research in social work, and to write it in such a way that it would apply to other applied fields, which we have done. So it's more than a cookbook. It gives a background history of research. It also has a survey in it that actually went out to key people in a convenient sample. Several hundred people, asking them what works for them, what doesn't work for them, what the problems are. And we were able to find out some very important things which have been ratified. And some of them are quite obvious. There's a clear difference between schools that have a PhD program and schools that don't have a PhD program, not only associated with them, but within reach of them, that may be within the same university. Now that's kind of obvious to us, but it wasn't obvious to the field in their ability to get money, and their ability and what monies are they successful at. So this book talks about that, talks about what you need to put research in place. It actually gives funding lists of where to go to. It says, it gives a couple of key things of how to write grants, though it's not only about grant writing and so forth. It was put out at the end of, published at the end of November of 2011. They published 3,000 copies. Much to my total surprise, it's on its second printing. We're printing 5,000 now. I'm just like floored, because on a subject like that, but it turns out that not only every school of social work, but a lot of the allied health fields are buying it, and it's not too expensive. I want to comment on the whole issue of writing in a team. Oh my God, is it difficult? In the past I've read my own book. That was difficult enough, or I've edited books. But writing a book as a team where each other critiques each other, rewrites it, each one saying they know better, is a lesson in keeping calm. But I can tell you as a result, I think we have a very, very fine product. Would I do it again? I don't know. It is 3 years and 3 months ago that this project started. It took 3 years to do. I know if I had done it myself, it would have taken me 1.5 years. But I had everything I thought was just fine until they got a hold of it and rewrote it. Then I rewrote theirs, and on we went. It's an integrated book. There isn't a chapter there that hasn't been handed on all of it. And also, it was sent out to a number of people for ideas. I want to point out that there are a couple of key things, advantages to schools that don't have PhD programs that are very germane to San Jose State, and that it totally has to do with our ability to work together in communities, our grassroots advantage, and really the terrific ability to take information, the science information, and make it into the applied world that we really have an advantage of. And just to give you all encouragement, if you might notice, partly result of this book and a couple of others, I'd like to take a mini credit for it. There are a number of branches of the government who are now putting out research funds only for schools who do not have PhD programs that have never been there before. Because if you know the fields, especially the applied fields, you will find out that most of the research that has been done we have not implemented. We haven't implemented the successful stuff, and so now the emphasis is out, how can the schools get the things that work out there? And that's what we're gifted in. So thanks. Buy the book. I always see a penny of it. That'll be something. I thought that was fun.
Thank you, Jerry. And I see our next author just got in from teaching, I believe. So be ready to step on up here. We've got Bud Gersman from Health Science.
My wife always said my timing is impeccable, so this proves it. Well, I don't know what has already been discussed. So tell me if I'm going off pace. I know you don't want to repeat the same points. Has anyone discussed royalties yet?
Yeah, not much.
Okay, so I'm going to discuss royalties a little bit. So this is my book, Epidemiology Kept Simple, or as my students call it, Epidemiology Made Complicated. And you know, it's a very complicated topic, and when I negotiated the title in 1996, they loved the title, and each edition has become more complex. And now, when I want to change the title, because I now refer to it as false advertising, the publisher says no, because it's selling well under this title, and it's too risky to change the title. So now we're sort of locking horns on that. So this is actually the second edition. The third edition is going to come out later this year, as soon as they agree to my title. Now, I'm going to have to give in on that one, I think. They have, I guess the royalty issue is they have all the power. And when I went into publishing a book, it was a daunting task. So I had a mentor who I used to see. I used to go down on my days I don't have campus on Friday. I go to Kelly's Bakery in Santa Cruz, and one of my neighbors was there. I knew he's a computer scientist from UCSC. And so we were very friendly, and we talked often. And he gave me a lot of guidance in this. If I wasn't going to talk about royalties, I'd talk about sort of mentorship. And he was just there to answer my questions. And when I asked, well, how did royalties, and he's written very popular books, because he's sort of always on the cutting edge of, he wrote a book on C++, which is a big programming language in the 90s, and then in the 2000s, Java. So his books stand on the shelf, you know, not just academic bookshelves, but really are big sellers. And so he's made a lot of royalties. And I asked, there was one point where he's concerned his wife thought they were cheating him out of the royalties. Because you know, you get these statements every 6 months, and they say we've sold so many copies this month, and you get 15% on the first 1,000, and no, it's like 10% on the first 1,000, or 12% on the first 1,000 is sort of standard, and then 12% on the next 1,000, and 15% on the next 1,000. So you know, but you never know how many they're really selling. You get a statement, they sold 600, and then they returned 700. You know, and then so that was actually on one of my statements. So I actually owed them money on one of them. So in their return books, they charge you sort of the shelving cost or something like that. So it hasn't been a big money maker, but. If I sort of calculated how much I've made on this, it would probably be less than minimum wage. But it's just, you know, as you know, it's just such a tedious task of writing a large book. But sometimes I do have a few $1,000s in a 6-month period, and sometimes I have zero, and sometimes I have negative. And then I went with a different publisher, and it was 5 to 10 times that. So getting back to my story about the computer scientist from UCSC, he was unwilling to really go back and audit his invoices, because there's really no way to do it. And by the time you sort of pay a forensic accountant to do it, it may cost you more than it's worth. So he just told me, and he was dealing with tens of thousands of dollars, and I'm not. So he just said you just have to trust him. So that's really all the advice I have for you on royalties. It's not, they're nice when they come in, but you can't count on them. You can't tell which publisher you're going to get a lot of royalties from, and which you're going to be sort of, you're doing it for nearly free. And so good luck to you, Mazel Tov on that. So that's really all I have to say about this, unless you have any more questions.
Thank you, Bud. And then our next author is Harvey Gottlieb from Journalism and Mass Communications.
And that's me up there demonstrating something. I was in charge of the magazine journalism program for about 25 years until I retired in 2008. But I had been a freelance writer for 40 years, and I had taken up Tai Chi for 20 years. And I taught a course starting in 2000 called How the American Media Covered the Holocaust and the Japanese American Internment. In turn, I've met a lot of Japanese Americans who are my friends now and Holocaust survivors, and some of them spoke Yiddish. And I had taken and tried to learn Yiddish through the years, but I never actually knew how. And then I realized that the Yiddish, some of the expressions, tied into my Tai Chi expressions. I thought, wouldn't it be wonderful if I could teach people about the Yiddish culture, the Yiddish language, the Yiddish history. You go, Zagagornish, say nothing. But there's 36 expressions here, and my purpose was, and there's also 8 pages heavily researched on the history of Yiddish and the Yiddish culture. I probably spent 25 or 30 hours on that, just to get that, and I went to the sources. But now I've got it on my own hustle. I'm not bragging, but I've got it in bookstores in New York, Detroit, San Francisco, San Jose, and Los Gatos. I've got it in Jewish libraries. I've got it in depositories. YIVO is the biggest depository of Yiddish material in the world, and they took it. And they've got it in there. I've got it on consignment in about 7 places. But like the Jewish Museum in New York says, send me 6 copies, I'll buy them outright. So sometimes, but you're hustling, and you're hustling all the time. But it's your baby. Nobody edits it but me. I decide, with the help of my designer, is a grammarian, and he was very good on that. And I was listening to other people, and I was making notes. I said, is it academic? Well, it is, because I did a lot of history on the research and the study of Yiddish and the Yiddish language and the Yiddish culture. So there's 8 pages in there out of the 118 like that. Let's see. Why did I do it? I did it because of the Holocaust survivors I met who are dying. We just was a funeral of one of the best Yiddish actresses ever who died last week. And at each meeting, each monthly meeting, fewer and fewer survivors are there. But I spoke at the survivors meeting, the one in March, last Sunday, and they bought 21 books. But I had people who were in their 80s and the 90s. At the end of my lectures, you got to do exercises. And I teach them how to do the exercise. And they had fun. And they did it. And it's light and it's heavy at the same time. And I've also did a little hustling in Santa Cruz, the biggest bookstore there that has presenters, and they've had some worldwide ones there. On April 9th, I've convinced them that I should be the presenter. And then I had to go to the Santa Cruz Sentinel and tell them, would you cover it? He says, if you're presenting, okay. Then I went to the other paper, but it was like a back and forth. It's a continual hustle when you do your own book to sell your own book. Okay, let's see what else I got. Bookstores, website, royalties. Post facto, it's fun. While you're doing it, it's a pain. But post facto, when you look at it and you get some nice comments from people, you say, good. And also, the Oi way, if you do the exercises of the Oi way, which says here, following the path of most resistance, if you do the exercises with doing the Oi way exercises, you can get rid of the Oi way in your life.